Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast. On this episode, we're talking to a new friend of ours, JD Gershbein.
So JD is the founder of Owlish Communications, and he really helps people properly utilize LinkedIn and for their personal brand, for networking, and not for sales.
Yeah, a lot of people, especially during this pandemic, have realized the importance of LinkedIn, and they've gone to a default sell mentality, and that's really not the best way to utilize LinkedIn because no one does business with anyone that they don't know personally.
Right. So we talked about at length about LinkedIn and how to properly utilize it, about content and how you need to kind of up your game because everybody else is upping their game, but not to shy away from making content too, because if you're not in front of the camera, how are you going to get better at it? So it's a great conversation. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's coming right up. And if you want it on audio, there's a whole bunch of other options too. So enjoy the show.
Enjoy.
Well, great. Well, we're in conversation with JD Gershbein. JD, we usually start off with you giving us a little information about, who you are and what you do.
Gosh, well, at least we've got the pronunciation of my name down. Since 2006, folks, I have partnered with professionals and their companies who seek a greater understanding of LinkedIn. So my core services for business people are LinkedIn profile writing and LinkedIn personal consultation, and for companies, LinkedIn corporate training. So I got to LinkedIn at a time when nobody was engaging me for the work I do today. And a lot of things had to happen for me to have a career. And fortunately, they did.
Yeah, right. And so we met through SIL, which once again, another shout out to Chris Johnson and the Strategic Introduction League, which they're featured on here a lot. Maybe they should start sponsoring the podcast.
Yeah, right.
No, don't. The amount of guests that he's given us has been astronomical.
It's more worth than a sponsorship.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, you want to talk about a great networking organization. And I think as we sit here and have this conversation 10 months into a global pandemic, we've really started to separate out who the great connectors are and the wonderful communities we've been kind of maneuvering in and out of. And Strategic Introduction League has been one of the great ones. And I make it a point to attend every week. Thank you, Chris Johnson and Michael Pesahovich.
Yeah. Special thanks to those guys. So what they do is first half an hour, they have somebody speak. And that's when I first heard you speak on the work that you do on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And the entire time, I don't know if you're looking at my square on the 60 people that were there listening to you, but all I could do was nod my head as fervently as I possibly could, because everything you were saying was everything that, we talk a ton about on the branding, on the personal branding side, on the marketing side, on the sales side of things that just are so anti-social, utilizing anti-social tendencies on social media to try to make that quick score, that quick sale, that quick lead. And it was absolutely amazing. And so, one of the things that I'd love to talk about is just what people are doing right now and why if you get some of these connections, you report them. You say, listen, I don't need this to be on my feed. I don't need you in my network to come and try to sell me, and basically take this tool that I saw the potential in right from the start.
Well, since I started, folks, all I've wanted to do was lead by example and show people what's possible on the site. And I don't think it takes a global pandemic to point out some of the bad actors that have been out there. I think we started to see this coming into what we now call the coronavirus crisis, which has kind of really reshaped the engagement dynamic on LinkedIn. But what I'm seeing more than ever before is just this willingness to be authentic and vulnerable, which is, in my opinion, translated into very valuable connections that do lead to business wins. And it points out that there are some people that do not refrain from predatory sales behaviors. They come at people way too strong on the invitation to connect on LinkedIn. And I'm just someone who wants to do what's right on the site. I play to the ethics. I play to the sensitivity of people. I try to meet them where they are right now. I'm not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with anyone. And nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to be thought of as anybody else's sales lead right now.
Right.
It's just not that kind of time or climate to have those type of snake oily behaviors. So you get noticed, hard to believe, for just checking in with people, building trust, establishing rapport. That's what moves the needle.
Yeah, right. It's like, how did we end up getting here?
Yeah.
You know, to the point where you have to remind people to be
Human.
Yeah. And by the way, can I just state that this is my authentic self? I'm not anyone else here today with you.
Right.
Yeah.
You get authentic JD coming at you right now.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right. And that's all you could really ask from people. And when you're dealing with, hopefully that the pandemic, what it's done is it's shown people that, you know, you have to do this type of work, right? You have to try to build a relationship in order to, you know, get somebody to talk to you again. You know, and a lot of relationships within business, they take forever, you know, like they take a chunk of time. People don't just jump in the water with somebody because you have the next great product. And if I could, you know, talk about how or point out all the times that people have come to me saying that they do marketing work and didn't even check to see what I do. You know, like, oh, yeah, well, here, 100% new sales. And it's like, do you even know what? You didn't even look.
Yeah, right.
You got a name on a list.
Well, that's the classic bypassing of the relationship building process that we're seeing, which is so prevalent today. And I mean, my gosh, don't these people realize that nobody's just going to buy on spec?
Right.
I mean, it does take a little bit of two-way conversation here. And what happened to the buyer's journey? Everybody's trying to sell. Everybody's trying to promote. It's really like the wild, wild west out there right now. The homepage of LinkedIn looks like the classifieds at this point. There's not a whole lot of substantive discussion going on out there. So as someone who's a bit of a maverick and a bit of an individualist, I go out there and try to show people what's right and be a role model in this. I mean, you're trying to have a conversation with people before you hit them with any kind of sales pitch. And I don't sell. LinkedIn is not a sales platform. It's a place to reference yourself in the business universe and in an inbound fashion, draw people to your profile and to your content and schedule time on Zoom. This is the next piece, the next great piece of how to manage virtually is moving from seeing a name and a face on a screen to a name and a face on a Zoom call and being able to open up about what you do professionally and see what synergies there are worth exploring.
I love what you've said about LinkedIn not being a sales tool. I think we should get that on a banner.
Yeah.
We should get that on a banner.
That's on a t-shirt.
Please
should
do.
Be on a t-shirt. Yeah. Well, because it is right. People, it's like we talk about this this line from a book by R.B. Richard Bodo. He's a film financer, crowdsourcing. A film writer director, wrote a book about crowdsourcing, which is about basically getting people interested in your film before you shoot the film.
Right. Not crowdfunding, but crowdsourcing.
So
Sure.
Actually building an audience beforehand. And he said it best. He's like, if you're just broadcasting on social media, you're missing the point because it's called social media. It's not called broadcasting. It's not, let me tell you how great I am. It's, let's enter the conversation. Let's talk about what could make this better. You know, so
when you combined the business aspect into social media, that's when you get like this volatile potion of people not understanding really what it is. And then you get the classified, right? They're acting like it's a newspaper. Newspaper can't talk back to you. It just can't.
We're learning what it takes to promote ourselves artfully. And you can really turn people off if you come at them with too much ego. And if you just diminish that component even a little bit and involve the reader, involve the community, then they're going to be more motivated to weigh in. They're going to leave comments. They're going to engage around your content. And most importantly, they may be willing to share it and become an ambassador for your brand. And the problem is that everybody's not doing the reverse engineering. They're just putting themselves out there just ad nauseum. Look how cool I am. Look at this blog I just wrote. Check out this video I just produced and buy my online course. and what do you expect? I mean, client-centric perspective. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of your ideal client. Does the ideal client care how cool you are? No, they don't care how cool you are.
Right.
They only care about the strength of your problem or the strength of your solution, and will it be a best fit for their problem?
Right. Right. Yeah, you said a whole bunch of great stuff there, because it's what we keep talking about when it comes to companies and video, right? Because we keep on hearing people say like, "Oh, we need this video," right? And then they proceed to then tell you what they want to put into the video, what they want to say, right?
True.
And it's like, okay, so, but at no point in this conversation does it ever come up as like, well, what does your audience want? What are they looking for? Who are
Yeah, what's
they?
the problem you're trying to solve?
Right.
I mean, but no, it's they just keep putting their foot on the gas and just
Right.
saying, look how cool I am. This is what I'm done. I'm honored and delighted to be speaking here, guesting here. What does this have to do with your problem? Not really sure. But again, look how cool I am. So I think that's what we're seeing. It's coming out of first person. And look, it's great to tout on our accomplishments. Look, if we don't toot our own horn, nobody else will. So
Right.
we have to be out there in a certain way, talking about the good things that are happening to us in business. But quite frankly, there are not a lot of good things happening to not a lot of good people right now. This is not the time to gloat or boast.
Right.
It's a time to, again, figure out where's the give back. Can I be altruistic in the way that I parse out my value? Do my solutions have meaning or context to those I'm trying to serve? Keyword there is serve. And when you reach people from a place of service and truly maybe even a wellness check, at very least, they'll be more inclined to listen to you and go down that path with you.
Right. Yeah. And just getting to build relationships and to do that whole aspect of it, it really, throughout season 1 of In Conversation, what ended up happening was the early conversations were all about giving, right? Give as much as you possibly can, right? And then it turned into us talking a lot more about branding and about understanding what your audience wants. And then it turns into, once again, the content that you actually create. Mm-hmm. So what you just said about like, you really have to try to give back and offer people as much as you possibly can to start that conversation as well. And that goes from whether or not that's your give-get strategy of, trying to show somebody what you can do for them, how they can solve the problem, all the way to your content being like, look at all this value I'm giving you, right? All this value of how to, all this value on top of, the content that I have. Would you be interested in having further conversations with me after that, after knowing that I'm willing to give you all of this stuff?
Well, value is in the mind of the perceiver, and what someone might think is value, others might not deem as such. So how do we really measure our effectiveness with the conversations we're having? And I think a lot of that has to do with how willing are you going to be with your time. And if you're going to go out there and network, and I know that's a term that a lot of people would prefer to call mostly connecting, but we're networking. I mean, we're building this social network that has a structure and a functionality and a biology and a chemistry and a physics to it, all of those dimensions of science. And we have to operate within the parameters of this network that we've built.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're going to be throwing things out there into the cold, indifferent universe, and what's going to come back to you? When you start to build relationships and really, again, approach people from a more altruistic perspective, benevolence, all of those virtues, kindness, tolerance, sensitivity, these are the things that people pick up on. And man, in a global pandemic, they're picking up on it very sharply right now. Then it leads to a second conversation, then a third, and then you start to kind of feel that you're building a relationship. Now, I focus on that. I'm very willing to have 30 minutes with someone on a Zoom call and not talk about business. I want to hear what they're watching on Netflix, or how about that local sports team, or whatever the case may be. But then when you are talking about your services, there's a way to do it that's palatable and a way to do it that's offensive to people. Sure. And there's just, again, we reach that threshold where people want to bypass the whole trust building thing and go right into their product specs. or what they can offer in terms of a 30, 60, or 90-day engagement with them. Right. And that's fine, but have they really earned the right to do so? Ooh. I don't know. I think you got to earn the right to sell these days.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like the earn the right to sell. That makes a lot of sense.
Me too. I think that's why I said it.
Yeah. Right? Have you earned the right to sell? And social media is such an instant gratification type of, or at least it's seen as instant gratification. There's a lot of instant gratification depending on what type of business you're in. If you're a model, you get all these likes and everything, or anything else like that. So it's an instant gratification. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong with building their profiles on LinkedIn, is either they start the content and they don't get instant gratification, then they stop, which is the worst thing you could possibly do, because once again, trust takes a long time to build, right?
Yeah.
Jack and I don't have, didn't have more trust now than when we started talking about branding and talking about audience building, talking about transmedia storytelling, all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. If you're not out there and continually talking about it and engaging with people that are much more intelligent than you are on the subjects, right? Then nobody's going to give you the any time that's worth their salt, because you haven't earned it yet. So
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I approach every conversation with the idea of what can I learn about the person that I'm in this Zoom situation with, and I use Zoom. It's my platform of choice until further notice, and I'm very active. I'm putting in long days on Zoom, fellas. I mean, I'm from the time I wake up to the time I pretty much hit the dinner hour, and sometimes even beyond, I'm on Zoom with little breaks. Yeah. And that's the way I've structured my day. I'm hardwired for it. It doesn't faze me. There's no Zoom fatigue in my world. I'm definitely in. I'm all in on this. So for me, anybody that's going to bow out or say that it's a little too much for me, or I'm zoomed out, or Zoom fatigue, I understand the neuroscience behind fatigue, but at the same time, this is business development. Mm-hmm. That every Zoom call is an opportunity to build brand. Every time you unmute your microphone in a networking event, all eyes and ears are on you. You better say something smart, create some intrigue, cater to the sensibilities of people. Otherwise, there won't be much of a follow-up. You can't just go through the motions with this virtual world now. You really have to be present in the moment with people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we were just talking to Larry Long Jr. about your comments on Zoom fatigue. It's just, get over it. Like you gotta push through it, because it's going to be the way this is going to be, going forward. We were just talking yesterday about the podcast and how originally we were doing it in person. We'd go over to wherever these people were and we just set up. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if I ever want to do that again, because first of all, most of the interesting people sometimes aren't anywhere near you, right? Yeah. Like, how am I supposed to get there?
Right. And
with 2 camera setup time, I have 2 cameras on us, but if I also was trying to shoot you, then I have all these other cameras I need to have, right? And
that's
set up and everything. So it does allow yourself to be able to, go out there. And so Zoom will be our podcasting
until we get a studio.
Until we get maybe not even that. I mean, if we get a studio, we could still be using Zoom, because these people could be wherever they are.
Yeah.
And when we've got vaccinations on board, I'll come into your studio, because if you think I'm engaging now, wait till you see me in studio. I'm a whole lot better, because I'm going to do the very same thing. I had plans to release a show, had a studio, had a branded set, a very cool set, right out of Mad Men, mid-century decor. Ooh. And filming in front of a live audience, the whole shot. And then the global pandemic hit. Damn you, coronavirus. So best laid plans and all that. But the ability to get out and shoot and create content and edit content and distribute it in a meaningful way to people. And I think that's, again, let's harp on that for just a sec. How are people delineating what is presentable, quality content, and stuff that's absolute unwatchable junk? Yeah. I mean, have you seen the unwatchable crap that's out there? And again, I applaud people for having a voice. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But the stakes are going up. The LinkedIn audience has elevated. It's not just about having video content. It's about having watchable video content that will literally stop people in their tracks from scrolling and want to launch it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, Geez, the great part is that a lot of the great or the unwatchable content sometimes is the stuff that looks the best too. I'm reminded of a video
Sometimes.
sometimes I'm reminded of a video that I saw that was just another COVID-19. We're still open. Junk. The same thing over and
Well,
over
quiet
again.
resignation. I mean, look, the dampening stuff at the beginning of the pandemic, we had to watch. I would rather see a disgruntled or fatigued healthcare worker turn her iPhone on herself or him on himself and talk about what they're facing on a daily basis in the hallways of the hospital. That's important stuff. We need to hear that.
Mhm.
We're all overburdened. We're all leveraged to the hilt. Many people are financially strapped. Their households are not what they used to be. And on top of it, they're homeschooling children. So their lives are so much more stressful right now. Truthfully, not the time to turn the camera on yourself, authenticity notwithstanding. If you're going to go out there on a business platform and talk about your business and sell yourself to potential clients, you might want to up level a little bit and kind of tone some of that down and talk about what it means now to do the kind of business you do and how you're pivoting and what that means to the potential client. I've always kept my potential clients in my sights because I understand their pain points. Their pain points are my pain points. I can't teach them if they're not willing to be taught. I can't write their profiles if they don't see the importance of personal branding or appreciate the value I can provide for them. And nobody should either. If people are hell bent on doing things their way and not growing and not expanding or not fighting their way through this and just turning the camera on themselves and being morose, I'm not sure I really want to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, what we constantly see with video production is that people are just looking for something to put out, right? And I think that the
True.
messaging or what they actually, we keep coming back to this because this is really the type of work that we're trying to get into, is storytelling not for just the one thing. But what are you trying to get people to understand about you in a whole, right? A lot of times with video production, you'll end up with a video that explains a service, for example, right? And then that's it. Unless something changes with that service, how are you going to expand on that video, right?
True.
So unless you do like yearly updates, which once again, not a good idea because you need to be a little bit more consistent than yearly updates. And so that becomes a question of like, you need to be authentic. You need to up the production quality of it, sure, but
Yes.
the story of like, what's the goal? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to let people or have something swim around in somebody's head when they see you post a blog, a video, audio piece, a podcast? What are the I go back to core values, but
Well, the end game. Are you trying to teach people something? Are you trying to let them know that you're finding strength in helping them find their strength? Motivational videos, micro learning videos, welcoming videos, things like that. Yes, when they're done well and they captivate, they're beautiful and people want more. You want to keep coming back to that type of content. But ranting on stuff, I'm not really sure that's the way to go on LinkedIn. Just really kind of keeping it on the straight and narrow, so to speak, and not being contrarian, not being controversial. I think that's important too. And if you are going to turn the camera on yourself, be smart, be creative, be fun. People like to, it's hard to do one-on-one spontaneous video. It really is. Look, I have my challenges with it too, but the final cut that I put out there, it has to be good. It has to be solid because it's our brands on the line, right? Some people are seeing us for the first time doing this. We want to make sure that our presentation is where it should be and keep rehearsing, keep getting better, continuous improvement, just practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Late at night when everybody's asleep, I'm down here working on my delivery. Early in the morning, I get up. I have a couple cups of coffee. I work on my programming and presentation. So I'm trying to get as good at the craft as I can.
Yeah.
Ironically, that I would stumble as I was saying that. Good at the craft as I can. But there's my authenticity playing through, fellas.
There you go. Right. So there's a couple different points here when it comes to content, creating content, and then trying to make everything perfect, and then never putting out anything or stopping because it's not perfect. So it's a really interesting kind of balance you got to find.
Right. It's like there's a razor's edge of like what is it's because as long as you keep getting better with your content, then it's worth doing it. And that's the thing too. The more podcasts we do, the first one, I don't know, I guess it has the most views, or most listens to, most downloads, but it wasn't our best podcast. I mean, hopefully number 42, which is this one right now, is our best podcast we put out. And we constantly start to add different features like the YouTube. Now we're on YouTube, and then we have 2 cameras, and now we have a real DSLR camera that's shooting us. That's not off the webcam. So we're constantly upping the ante. But the only way you can actually start, like if we started like this right off the bat, I don't know how long we would stick with it, because there's a lot of different things that you start to learn as you continue to produce that content.
Right.
Well, the craft of podcasting is growing in leaps and bounds. It seems like everybody's got to have a podcast now. And once you start doing it, once you start getting into the throes of producing content on a serial basis, you start to see that it's hard, and you appreciate what the folks in professional media do on a daily basis, whether they're going out to cover events or whether they're in studio anchoring a newscast. I mean, it's hard work. That's why people go to school for it, and that's why only the best of the best get selected in the major markets. And there's a certain dues paying process with podcasting. I'm about ready to launch. I've got extreme media training. I've been doing it since high school. First day of my freshman year at New Trier West High School in Northfield, I joined my high school radio station. And immediately I was on the air within a matter of days doing a show. I completely lost my stage fright, and my ability to handle myself in front of a microphone really started to emerge very quickly, which led to other types of skills. So, and into professional speaking. So it's not as easy as it looks, and it's hard to tell stories. And when you're looking into a webcam sometimes and you don't know what's on the other side of it, you have to be good. You have to be poised, and you have to bring a certain level of polish that is going to keep people coming back. Right. Because if it's not good, or if it fails, or if your guests aren't compelling enough, I'm trying to be the compelling guest for you guys here as well.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Then I mean, that's how you build an audience. And in my case, I'm re-engineering my audience. So I've got a nice network on LinkedIn. Does everybody know I'm launching a podcast? No. Will everybody know? I hope so. I'm going to be as aggressive as I can with it, much like you guys want to promote your program. And that's what we're doing. We have a lot of people out there on LinkedIn cross-pollinating and guesting on podcasts, which are great ways to produce content, didactic content, content that will help consultants and advisors move their practices forward. Yeah. So I'm always extolling the merits of being good on camera or in front of the microphone, because this is your brand in action. Yeah. This is the decision on you in real time.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, when you start thinking about content, that's what we keep on harping on, is that it's like it's a world, right? Your story lives within a world.
Yeah. True.
You have, like you said, when you represent yourself on our podcast, it can't be a different JD than is on a different podcast who's like, LinkedIn's stupid. This doesn't work. Just sell, right? I mean, that's obviously a crazy extreme.
Bizarro JD.
Yeah, Bizarro. Right. Right, but if you have to understand what that story is, and then you could start to produce content that works. And the same thing that happened with video, that's continually happening with video, is now happening, to your point, with podcasts. Everybody's like, oh, I have to have a podcast. oh my God, I don't have a podcast. Oh, how do we get this podcast going? All right, well, how are we going to do this podcast? We get this podcast, and then we're talking. And they don't ever think about, what are they trying to do with the podcast? Are you just trying to have a podcast? Because if you're just trying to have a podcast, you're doing a great job, right? Are you focused in on something? Are you trying to educate people on something? Is it strictly a podcast about your business and what you offer? Which, by the way, nobody wants to listen to that, right?
True.
So that's like an audio pamphlet for your business. I mean, everybody throws out pamphlets. Nobody's going to listen to that audio. Yeah. What are you trying to do, right? And I think that as of late, recently, we've been a little bit more, or we're beginning to be a little bit more like, all right, we don't want these people on our podcast. We want these people on our podcast. We're going to focus more on the branding, marketing, storytelling world, right? When before it was more a creative entrepreneurship type thing. Now it's going to be, well, we're going to try to angle it back to branding as much as we can, because that's where most of our content engagement is. Yeah. That's where our business lies when we're trying to convince people.
And, honestly, it's just one where we get more excited about talking about it.
That's right, too.
So, So,
I've kind of cultivated the persona of a professional edutainer, because I believe in the value of both education and entertainment in broadcasting. And I think you have to keep people captive and hold them wrapped, and at the same time entertain them, laugh while they learn. I think that's an important piece. And I am infusing more humor into what I do. I think that's an important piece of the human condition, is our ability to laugh, especially in the face of challenge and adversity, as we are right now. And that's what will keep people drawn to you. And that's how you build an audience, is through that kind of common thread. I've heard enough podcasts with entrepreneurs who are not that great on camera, who are telling us how they did it. And their story is of value to no one. It's a value to them, but not everybody who is trying to build a 9-figure business is in their garage right now, wondering where their next move is or how they're going to get their dream funded. But it's about really listening to people who have kind of been there to a certain point, and what they felt and what they experienced, and how they can impart pieces of their wisdom to others. I can't identify with Jeff Bezos. He came from humble beginnings, of course, but the guy sitting on an unbelievable empire right now. Who identifies with that? He's in a class by himself. But there are plenty of people who have struggled to get businesses going, who feel really good about their progress, who have succeeded on a level because they're great philanthropists, they're great men or women of medicine, they're great leaders, they're great solution providers, great innovators. These are the people I want to hear from. What was going through their mind? What drove them to achieve? Right. It's not all about the extrinsic and intrinsic motivators that create huge amounts of wealth. It's about people who are coming to the fore as great human beings in all walks of life.
Yeah. Right. And it comes back to, it's like bringing humanity back into who your idols are. I mean, you can't think about like, I want to be like Jeff Bezos, which I don't know if anyone wants to be like him, except for the amount of money he has. But you can't be like, that is the goal entrepreneur, that's the goal person to be, because it's not. It can't be, because like you said, there's no one can identify with him.
Well, and then to his point though, a little further, was like those people that are that are entrepreneurs, that are success stories, that aren't Jeff Bezos and made all this money, but even those people, it ends up turning into one of their online courses in a podcast form, or it's like buy my web course, learn how I did it, learn my system, learn.
Well, that's the key. Is the system won't work for everybody. For every Jeff Bezos, there are 100, maybe 1,000 folks who are still sitting on square one, who can't get off the schneid or who can't get funded. And entrepreneurship is a state of mind. They're successful entrepreneurs, and there are entrepreneurs who can't get a break. Yeah. But the entrepreneurial instinct and entrepreneurial flair is something that can be taught. I've taught it. I speak on it. And I'm an entrepreneur. I've assumed the risk of an entrepreneur. I've never worked for corporate America. I've never sat at a desk on Cubicle Row and had to make phone calls or do reports or any of that stuff. I'm not cut out for that. I'm not hardwired for that.
Mm-hmm.
But many people are. I'm cut out there to kind of be in the face-to-face, eye contact, feet on the floor world, building relationships, betting on myself to win world, the eat what I kill world, so to speak, in the world of sales. So more and more people are doing this. And because of the pandemic, as we tape this, guys, more and more people are out there hoofing it, pounding the pavement, trying to build new businesses. They've basically had it. There's no such thing as job security in their world anymore. They are going out and they're setting themselves up and being their own bosses. And it's something that's as much a part of the American dream as anything else.
So we were talking to Larry Long Jr. last week about the importance of building these students. So essentially what his company does, the company they work for does, just allows student athletes in collegiate areas like Division I, Division II, whatever, after they get off the field, whatever game they play, they have all the pictures and videos tagged with them for them to use on their social media, right? And the idea here was, we kept on going back and forth about it, about how, a lot of these student athletes are now going to get opportunities to sponsor different things and everything because of their online presence and the followers that they have, right? Mm-hmm. But we also spoke about how not every college football player makes it to the NFL.
Yeah.
It's just a fact, right? Not
you
every
sure
one
about
of them
that?
I'm pretty sure, unless there's like 180 teams that nobody ever hears of.
Yeah, right.
Right? So not everyone gets in, but the wealth of the importance of building that brand regardless. Yes. And how that then relays into their future work life. And I'm thinking, when you were talking about how there are a whole bunch of people now that are just kind of thrusted onto this stage, being like, there's no such thing as job security. I've always wanted to do X, Y, or Z. Yeah. How important building their personal brand is right now. Had they probably weren't, or maybe they did sparingly, but how important it is now to just start to do the right things, to take the right steps.
Yes. Absolutely. I think much of what we call our personal brands has already been ingrained in us since we were in childhood. And we've carried forward a certain schema, the way we have incorporated things into our lives, and what we've kept and what we've discarded over time. And when we're out there manifesting in the real world, these choices and options and decisions on who we are, where we take people's minds on us, they can go in any different direction. We have no idea. We want to be perceived in a certain way. Maybe we're not. But if we follow our own course of action, if we adhere to our own core values, we do come off as a pure brand. People remember us for who we are, what we stand for, what we said in a certain situation. And ideally, that translates into the products we sell, the services we provide, the companies that we work for or founded, the niche that we want to drive. This is all a part of building brand. But again, there's so much of it that lies outside our control. We control what we can, and we hope that what's left out there for other people to gather on us and glean from us is all positive and is strong. I mean, if you want to build a brand, you want to represent strong in the minds of others and the hearts of others.
Yeah. It's just it's a fact now. I mean, there are a ton of people out there that had some sort of job security, and then it was just kind of taken away, and now they're on the market, and a lot of them are doing what you said, where they're the classifieds on LinkedIn, right? Just trying to do anything. Their nephew was like, hey, you have to be on LinkedIn, and then there they are. So, and everything that we've been speaking about so far has all been about like different methods, well, not methods, but different practices that you can do to really utilize LinkedIn to its fullest potential and not as a sales tool.
Just being out there as an authentic professional, whether you're looking to build a business or build a career. A lead is a lead is a lead. And again, a door can open when you least expect it. But again, as I've often said, LinkedIn is like a lottery. You must be present to win. And you have to go out there every day with the belief in your own ability, but in the faith that something will happen. When you put yourself out there in the universe in a positive way and make investments, then you have the ability to ask for withdrawals. And LinkedIn, like anything else, operates on an economy. And if you're going to be good to people and make introductions on their behalf and support them and validate them when they ask for it, you deserve the same treatment on the other side.
Right.
And again, that's as important, if not more powerful, than any strategy we have in navigating the site or learning how to use the site. It's about seamlessly using LinkedIn as an intermediary between the real and the virtual world to advance your goals and achieve an objective.
There you go. That's very well said. And that is absolutely the point of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Because like with anything else, right? So on LinkedIn, if you get introduced to somebody through somebody else and you talk to them and you're like, yeah, that was thanks for introducing, but that wasn't what, we didn't vibe. There was something, a little off, maybe not all people that you don't get along with are always trying to sell you immediately. It's just like it just didn't happen. Not a big deal. Right. And that's the same way with networking. I mean, if you expect to go to one networking event and then find the white elephant.
Yeah. Find your 6 dream clients.
Right. then you're already out of the game. You're never going to find that. And you're never going to go back. Right? I mean, how many people have we been introduced to that,
fizzled?
Perfectly, well, fizzled, sure, we thought were things. But I was saying they're perfectly great people, but just, like there was just nothing really for us to go off of after, right? Either we didn't really understand each other, we chose not to understand each other. But every once in a while you end up meeting somebody that you're like, wow, this has potential to be a great connection, a great cornerstone of my network for the next 30 years. This has potential to be something huge, maybe not even business wise, right?
Yeah.
But just something huge that I know that we can always rely on each other. And that's the whole thing with LinkedIn. Like you said, you got to keep on paying into it. You got to participate and not just post, but participate. Like if you like somebody else's post, don't just give it a like, comment, share, try to engage other people in that conversation. Then all of a sudden, not only does that do wonders for the ecosystem of LinkedIn, but also shows other people that might run into you going like, hey, this guy's really involved in this specific industry that he claims to be an expert in. He's commenting, he's involved with these other people that are also experts, maybe in different fields, maybe in the same fields, and they're discussing ideas all the time,
True. And now we're in a discussion of what social networking really is. I mean, for a decade and a half, we understood the social networks to be these incredible structures where you would bring professionals into your network, you would be in theirs. There would be this kind of cross-pollination or overlap into the networks of others. These sub-tribes would start to form. You'd start to see patterns and habits start to develop within networks. But now with the pandemic, we're truly seeing the value of interpersonal relationships and connecting, and social networking is at play. Many people postponed this. They never really used the site to bridge the gap between the goal and the reality. And I'm on record as saying that you will never understand the value of your professional network until you're confronted with the urgency of using it. And now we have the urgency of using it. And suddenly people are leaning into LinkedIn, some for the first time who have postponed it for many years, and they feel stressed because they're lagging behind. They haven't done some of the things to really understand the people who inhabit their networks.
Yeah.
And again, what are they doing? Out of default, they're just settling into a sales pattern.
Yeah.
and
Right.
just trying to sell or assert themselves in some way. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do LinkedIn. That's what I speak about today to groups, to organizations, to companies. Nobody needs any tutorials on the site. If you need to figure out how to use something or do something, just go to YouTube. There's ad nauseum tutorials on any subject you want to find. But when it comes to the overlaying behaviors and the dynamics of social engagement and how people truly generate wins, that's where you'll find me, because that's the psychology and the neuroscience and the implied improvisation that I'm trying to bring to the study of LinkedIn for people. Is we're just folks talking and trying to make something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And conjure our own destinies from thin air.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like you said, like, you don't know how valuable your network is until you have to actually use it. Right. And I know that, like, I just got back into LinkedIn probably like 2 years ago. Right.
Where have you been?
I had it set up, and then 2 years ago I got back on it because it was like, well, we have to do something or whatever. And we were just trying.
Well, everybody's on it. We got to be on it.
Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. But now I'm understanding the value of it. And, you don't know how valuable your network is until you have to lean on it. So, like, when I have, just going back off of the podcast, it's like, okay, well, we're like, everybody we know that was worth talking to is over, right? And then you're at 30 episodes and you're like, what now, right? Then all of a sudden you accidentally go to, then you start looking at people that you're like, well, they didn't make the first cut, but maybe they make the second cut on just to continue to go. Well, that's also a bad way to put it, because then you get conversations, right? Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's nice to know I'm in your B+, B- offering.
No, you're in the A+ offering.
Right.
A plus.
Well,
A+.
yes, we're on season 2, so
right.
We're
wow,
reestablished.
Right.
So see, had I known you earlier, I would have easily made season 1, right?
Yes.
Oh,
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah,
yes.
You would have
just making sure.
Yeah. It would have been like, well, see, this is the kind of guy we have to find.
Right.
That's
right.
the thing.
Exactly.
These are the people we got to find. So, but then when you get Chris Johnson involved, which he's been a huge help, and you get a couple of other people that are introducing you to people on a regular basis, all of a sudden now you have this revolving door that you're like, oh, I could pick and choose people, not say, oh, well, it has to be you. Please come on the podcast because I need somebody for next week. And pushing the needle. But that just goes back to, you don't know how powerful your network is until you have to use it. And ours was pretty weak until we started to engage with other people to be like, hey, we need podcast guests. If you run into somebody interesting, if you could, send them our way, right? And for the most part, when people meet somebody interesting, they're like, oh, yeah, that'd be, yeah, sure, I'm going to introduce you to the Brothers Conrath, or the Conrath Brothers, or the Brothers Grimm. We're called many different group names.
And that's what we're seeing in this ever-evolving world now of podcasting. You've got a lot of hosts who it's much like when you get into the life insurance business and they tell you to go alienate your friends and family.
Yeah. Right.
and then after they won't buy, then you're faced with actually picking up the phone and trying to make a living. Right. And I think that after you've exhausted certain people who you feel might be good guests, and sometimes, you know what, there's something to be said for being a good guest. I work hard at being a good guest, and it comes naturally to a certain point. But again, I know that it's for all parties. It's not just for me going out there and promoting my appearance on your program, but it's about you building an audience and me bringing you new viewers / listeners and building your community. And podcasting is a huge community builder right now.
Yeah.
And it's also great for folks who want to be value creators and who are kind of telling their stories from different angles. I've guested on about maybe 30 plus podcasts since the start of the pandemic. And some have been great. Others have been okay. But you know what? It gives me a chance to tell my story. And from the transcript, I go back and I get ideas for my book, or for my blogs, or I pick up on something I said that maybe I haven't said before. And what keeps us fresh and what keeps us going and what keeps us connectable is the fact that we are saying things about ourselves in ways that don't sound canned. And when you go into a networking event and you're asked to give your 15 or 20 seconds, your pitch,
Right.
which, by the way, I'm not a big fan of the word pitch. It's got a very slimy, salesy connotation to me. But it's how you talk about yourself in terms that are palatable for those you wish to serve. Because you can spot a pitch a mile away.
Yeah.
But when you're being sincere and you're coming from a place of altruism and client-centric perspective, people will notice. You're saying things different. You don't sound like it's scripted or rehearsed. It's really kind of emanating from you, like part of your DNA. It's coming from within your soul, as opposed to something you've written out and tried to memorize.
Right.
So that's how I communicate. My part of my value is by making it sound fresh every time.
Yeah.
That's what an improv background will do for you guys.
Yeah.
You know,
And well, that, and yeah, I mean, we have a touch of, I think growing up as in the household that we did, filmmaking wise and everything, kind of forced us to be comfortable in front of the camera and be our authentic self.
There you go.
But I wanted to comment again because I mean the podcasting, you're like building up a community, and then being able to enter into other people's communities to talk. But then also it's practice for you to understand, how to better message yourself in a certain degree. Like I said, you say something that you've never said before.
Right.
And that happened recently. Well, it happens all the time on the podcast.
Yeah, right.
I make the little snippets.
It happened 3 minutes ago.
It did. There you go. Right. And so you make these little snippets and you're like, oh, this really does explain when I'm trying to talk about how we don't shoot commercials, right?
Yeah.
That's not something that if somebody comes to us and like, we want to shoot this commercial, I'm like, no. And trying to explain that. And then now just being able to say that, you know what, in reality, that doesn't really attach well to your brand because you're buying attention and you don't want to buy attention. You want to earn attention. And that's the reason why we shy away from one-off projects that are just a one video type thing. Tell me about your services. Try to get somebody to buy immediately.
Some
when it doesn't resonate with our philosophy at all.
Some blanket promotional video that doesn't tell you anything about the personality of the brand.
Right. So,
exactly.
But that's through the podcasting thing, and that's something that we really have to start to be a little more active on. We got to find people to come guests on.
Yeah, we have to try to find. We've been on one other podcast, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
we've been on one. But
They're out there. You'll find compelling people.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the goal, and hopefully somebody will find us compelling enough to have on.
Let me use a cinematic metaphor for you, because storytelling in film is accomplished through the editing. You can go out there and shoot, and you get your dailies and you review them, but it comes together when there's some at the hands of an astute and insightful editor. Mm-hmm. So when you're editing your story and you're going out there with the ability to tell it, you'll get better at that final product, that final cut, so to speak, of how you tell your story.
Yeah.
So what I've done through the years, and I've guested on podcasts, I've spoken, and I've had some very unique communication opportunities to build my platform. Again, I bring a very generic, finished product to it that doesn't make me sound canned. And for folks who are listening, who are trying to figure out their persona and how they should be on podcasts and not sound like a formulaic, boilerplate, monotonous guest, just work on the presentation, work on how you're going to edit your story. And when certain questions come down the pike, as they surely will, the how you do it questions, the what are you looking for questions, the what do you foresee happening in the future questions, you've got an idea as to where to go. You've got a reserve of information that you can pool and disperse at your beck and call.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Well, it makes sense.
There you go.
There you go. Right.
And you leave your host speechless in the process.
Well, what you're saying is just so true. And it's like, and people, a lot of times they're afraid to do something they've never done before. And it's like, that's the only way you're going to get any better at it. I mean, The only way you're going to get better at being in front of a camera is by being in front of a camera.
There's no growth within the comfort zone, fellas.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And, maybe this is just emblematic of what we were talking about, instant gratification, somehow trying to avoid the work to get the sale, which is what those slimy salesmen on LinkedIn try to do. And it's like, you got to put in the work. There's no substitute for work. And it's the same thing. Like we talk about how commercials are trying to trying to circumnavigate building attention. You know, they just want to say yes. They just want to take attention away from something that already has attention. Right. So it's like
True.
there's this
well,
idea.
If you're spending $250,000 for 30 seconds of major market media time, you're going to try to get that message out there in as salesy a way as possible. That's call to action. That's an embedded call to action that is designed to really drive the logo home and get people thinking about that product. And we can take a lesson from that. I think anybody can. I think there's something to be said for saying things in a way that's entertaining and useful and thought-provoking and gets you known immediately.
Well, I doubt, or I haven't seen any commercials
recently
at all that have been able to do that in a way. Like either you get the highly comedic progressive commercials, progressive, not progressive. I get progressive and progresso mixed up. So you have progressive where they have, the guy who Don't Become Your Parents, which is really funny. Yeah. He's like, I don't know if you've seen it.
He's like first-time homeowners.
Homeowners.
He coaches them on how not to become their parents.
Right. That's hilarious. But I don't see how you get from that commercial to then calling an agent to switch to progressive. I think the insurance sale or the insurance industry is a great example of why or how awry a lot of these commercials can get, because they're just like, I need to get somebody's attention, and you're getting the attention for the wrong reason, because that's not what insurance is about. Insurance isn't about funny. Nobody ever calls insurance because they're in a great mood. They call insurance because it's like, and they try to circumnavigate, you're in great hands, or some other, little word or something else or mission. What do you think about? Catchphrase, mission statement, something. Tagline. Thank you. Right. And they try to get that message across in that way. But what really needs to happen is that if you're going to do commercials, and this isn't anything against commercials, if you're going to do commercials, you need to have some sort of a ecosystem around it to continue to have people involved. Because once that commercial ends, it's right. You could go into the psychology of it. And it's like it continually is going in our brain, and you can't really say I'm not able to be advertised to. But is that really the way that you want people to engage with your brand? Well, you want people to come back for another reason. Yeah, well, you want people to be invited into the universe, into that brand world. Whereas a lot of these things where it's like that, the progressive commercial about that is hilarious. But, I'm interested in that, but then it just ends. And there's no follow-up. Or there is a couple, there's like two other commercials. 3 versions of it. There's three versions of that commercial, but I want to get into that world, but that world is cut off. It's like, well, you know what? Probably in a year, they're never going to use those commercials again. Right. They'll switch up and to go into something else. So it's like you had attention, and then you don't invite it into the world, into the brand world, into that ecosystem where you can have multiple different forms of content that people will actually engage with, which is going to be which is actually the goal of so it's promotion isn't bad, but promote and then pull them into some other content. Right.
Well, when you have 30 seconds to sell insurance products in an industry that's highly commoditized like anything else, and also has a certain stigma to it, I felt that's probably where they want to go. It's like all of the insurance carriers are just trying to out funny each other right now.
Yeah, right.
It's not working for any of them, in my opinion. I mean, first of all, if everyone is claiming to save you 15%, by the time you get through with 3 or 4 of them, you've saved 75 to 100%. So you're not paying anything for insurance after a while. So how can you continue to harp on the savings? But in all seriousness, these are exhausted executives, I think, who really are finding out that they're not out of the box thinkers and they're not creative. Right. I mean, what does it take to really make an impact nowadays in branding anything? Yeah. I mean, we have such limited attention spans. We're such fickle consumers. We'll buy once, but what are you going to do to keep us? That kind of mentality. And now it's all about getting the research out there, crowdsourcing, learning from your colleagues and peers and trusted confidants as to who you should be buying from, that kind of thing. And in terms of the people from whom you procure these services, same concept. which is where LinkedIn comes in. I mean, we're buying people to provide services and sell products to us, much in the same way we would buy the products themselves. People are packaged goods in a different kind of way.
Sure.
So I think I'm listening to what you're saying. I agree with you. But again, these silly commercials that the insurers are doing are getting through. They're getting known for the very reason that you're blowing off steam on them right now.
That's true.
They're making an impact. They're stupid. They're sub-intelligent. There are people who like them and think they're funny, but for the most part, I have to turn away and go, how in the hell is this going to make me want to buy this insurance product?
So you mentioned something about how we buy from people, and that's really what it is, right? Word of mouth will be the best way of getting somebody to buy a product ever. If I were to recommend something to you, JD, it'll have something more value to you because I recommended it. We know each other. We've had a couple conversations, right? And if I were to recommend something like, oh, I know a great guy who paints great owls, you'd be like, well, I'll check him out, right? Rather than a commercial that would come on halfway through the podcast about owl paintings, right?
Or us sponsoring, like, oh, and hold on 1 minute. We have to talk to our sponsor, John the Owl Drawer.
Right, exactly. It has more impact. And so that's what the commercials that, or what, when people, you said that the executives were scratching their head, and it's true because it used to work so well. How is it not working anymore? How are commercials not resulting in long forms of attention?
Very preoccupied society, and we're also a society that's bent on shortcuts and hacks and workarounds.
Right.
And we can find someone to do the work for us. That's the best of all worlds for some of these people. And in my area, that's not a world where people can have it done for you. You'll miss out on a lot of opportunities. Some could be completely game-changing. If you're not there attacking the site with your own personal cognitive forces. I mean, you have to think your way through everything. You have to really see who are good and who won't be good connections for you at this stage of the game on LinkedIn, which is what I've done. I engage in a completely different way than I used to, and I teach LinkedIn in a completely different way than I used to, for many of the reasons that we've stated in our conversation already. So, moral of the story is, it's about each individual's take on the system. No LinkedIn expert or strategist has all the answers. There are certain people who you can plug in and get a much broader based opinion or worldview of how they would do it. But for the most part, everybody has to make sense of it on their own level. And I give people the autonomy to do that. I'm just kind of like this LinkedIn whisperer, I guess, in the background, just saying, do you think that would be good for you? Should you accept this invitation to connect? Do you really think you need this part of your story in the profile?
Right.
Let them kind of make up their decisions. Let them do the work. Let them come to the realizations, and let them capitalize on their aha moments.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, because
it's not about me. It's not about me.
Right. Yeah. It's all depending on the individual person and what they're not necessarily what their goals are, but how best they can utilize it. And that we talk about that with content all the time. It's like, you have to make content, but what type of content, right? Are you a better blog writer? Is that what your industry's more about? Blogging, podcasts, and stuff? Because then that's what you should be focusing on, right? Is it more video?
Nobody has to do anything, guys.
Right.
I think it's a question of putting that out there for them to do, let them coming to their own conclusion as to what works for them. Quite frankly, I think that producing serial video content is out of the range of many people right now, even with the time they've been given through this pandemic. But building capacity in some way and finding an expression, finding a level at which they're comfortable to deliver something into the universe that is indicative of themselves and representative of themselves and portrays them in the best possible way. We talked about improving their skills and really up-leveling in front of the webcam and just being good on their Zoom meetings. That's a huge step for some people right now. Because we're all pretty good at reading body language by now on some of these folks. And if they're not involved or present or engaged, you can smell it a mile away.
Yeah, right.
So that's the first big thing, is to really impress upon yourself the importance of interacting in the virtual world now. And from there, ideally, you'll start to realize that it's important to bring your A game to every meeting and not just be mechanical or phone it in, but to really take a genuine interest in the person at the other end of the screen and make the eye contact and up level in your studio, buy some lighting, dress your set. Don't use those hokey backgrounds that Zoom gives you, which are just awful. And just meet people where they live.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, JD, this has been a great conversation. We usually end off with words of wisdom, but as is pretty traditional, the guests usually give their words of wisdom right before I ask for words of wisdom. But anything else that you think kind of summarizes the entire conversation?
I've been oozing wisdom out of every pore, guys. I'm not sure I got any wisdom left. You've just extracted all the wisdom out of me. I think that's the greatest piece I can offer is, we're told to be authentic, but I'll go it a step further, and I would say operate within your own stringent sense of individuality. And we shouldn't have to stretch our abilities to be authentic. Authenticity somehow has become a coachable skill. I'm not sure how. I'm not really sure we need to be reminded to be authentic at this point, but to be an individual, I think, is really the key. And think and act and feel and behave in an individual way, something that's uniquely identifiable to you and causes people to really attach significance to what you're doing. That's how you build brand. That's how you build a network. And that's how you build a convincing case for yourself in business.
Absolutely. There you go.
Succinct and well done.
Yep. That was very...
Thanks.
Yeah, perfect. Excellent. Well, I'm glad that we finally got you on the podcast. Looking forward to more conversations. Well, wow, wasn't that a great conversation?
It really was.
I hope that everybody learned a little something, because that's the reason why we do this podcast. We learn a lot from these experts like JD, and hopefully you guys are taking that knowledge and applying it, especially on LinkedIn, which is becoming very, very important to your own personal branding and networking efforts.
Yeah. And you know what? We also have a lot more great conversations where that came from, and we have a new episode of Stipulations coming out this Friday.
So come learn how to make a cocktail if you're so inclined.